Hello everyone, good morning. My name is Davarchana. Today I am present on paper number 105, History of English Literature. In this in this subject, I choose one topic: Matthew Arnold as a poet. He was a Victorian poet. This is my personal information. Today I am dealing with points to ponder like introduction, about poet, works, and conclusion. Introduction. More than many writers, Matthew Arnold has generated opposing reactions for different readers, and he resists simple classification. As a poet, he has been seen generally as significant, although he has never been widely popular. As a critic, he remains a common reference point in literature, cultural studies, and the humanities, although he is more subject to denigration than admiration. Matthew Arnold was a Victorian poet, and Matthew Arnold was born in December 24, 1822, in Leleham in England. He was a literary poet and a social critic, not on, especially for his classical attacks on the contemporary taste and manners of the barbarians, the Philistine and the populace. He entered the school officially the first time, then he moved in 1837 to Rugby School, which was run by his father, and where he stayed until the end of his secondary education in 1840. He was an English romantic poet and a Victorian critic. He is considered the father of the modern criticism movement of the objective theory. His critical thoughts are mainly highlighted through his important critic prose work, The Function of Criticism at the Present Time. His most important contribution to literary theory is his theories on epochs of expansion and epochs of concentration. He was died on April 15, 1888 in Liverpool. Matthew Arnold entered the University of Oxford in 1841 after receiving a grant from the Open that university, and in 1845 was named a fellow of the Arnold of the teaching staff of the faculty of the University of Oxford Oriel. Matthew Arnold took over the post of professor of poetry at Oxford University in 1857 to 1867, as well as its inspector general for school. He went on a number of missions and visitations of European schools. He impressed by some of educational system and wrote several books about them. He was always a creative and critical writer, although his writing life falls into two parts that center on his poetry and then his criticism. While he continued to write poetry after the publication of his poem, A New Edition in 1853, this new collection marks his transition from poetry to criticism, since it was his third and last volume of poetry. Moreover, its preface was the culmination of his poetic thinking. This preface repudiates the melancholy and dialogue of the mind with itself in modern poetry. His works like Cultural and Anarchy, Dover Beach, essays in criticism, God and the Bible, Sohrab and Rustam, The Scholar Gypsy, and The Study of Poetry. These are the works of Matthew Arnold. I chose one poem, Dover Beach. In this poem, Matthew Arnold take, took four stanzas, and he wrote in his poem 14 to 6 lines, and he also connect with rhyme like and a. And in this poem he wrote, the sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the stairs, on the French coast the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast. Out in the tranquil bay. Sorry. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. In this poem, he wrote that it is an enchanting today as was in Victorian age. Through this poem, Arnold reminds the spiritual doubt and uncertainty and loss of faith in Christianity and material progress, leading to skepticism. A world without faith and religion is dreary as a barren seashore. Absence of faith makes life meaningless without beauty. And in his poetry there were many characteristics, but I choose only two characteristics, like a criticism of life. Matthew Arnold's own poetry fulfills the condition of criticism of life to a large extent. His poem Dover Beach appears as a fitting example of it. The poem presents two major themes. First is express the poet's hopelessness and despair in the face of both his own spiritual crisis and that of his society. It then proposed true love as a relief to support this love of faith. In the same way, in his other poems, such as To Margaret, Resignation, Southern Night, and The Scholar Gypsy, Arnold is passing judgment on the life of his age, the life of his country, the lives of individual men. They all represent criticism of life because they address issues that are essential to the human being. And another characteristics of his poetry, like a poetic truth and poetic beauty. According to Arnold, poetry is a criticism of life under the conditions fixed by the laws of poetic truth and poetic beauty. By poetic truth, Arnold means representation of life in a way, and by the poetic beauty, he means the manner and style of poetry. And I choose W.J. Long book, and in this book he wrote general characteristics of Matthew Arnold, that like Arnold's influence in our literature may be summed up in a word as is intellectual rather than inspirational. One cannot be enthusiastic over his poetry for the simple reason that he himself lacked enthusiasm. He is, however, a true reflection of a very real mood of the past century, the mood of doubt and sorrow, and a future generation may give him a higher place than he now holds as a poet. Though marked by the elements notes of sadness, all Arnold's poems are distinguished by a clearness, simplicity, and the restrained emotions of his classics models. As a prose writer, the cold intellectual quality which mars his poetry by a restraining romantic feeling is of first importance, since it leads him to approach literature with an open mind and with the single desire to find the best which has been thought and said in the world. We cannot yet speak with confidence of his rank in literature, but by his crystal clear style, his scientific spirit of inquiry and comparison illumined here and there by the play of humor and especially by his broad sympathy and intellectual culture. He seems destined to occupy a very high place among the master of literary criticism. Conclusion. Matthew Arnold is one of the famous poet and critics of the age of the 19th century. He is often regarded as the father of scientific criticism. He also wrote extensively on social and cultural issues, religion, and education. Arnold, for the rest time, upheld the comprehensive view of poetry. These are works cited. Thank you.